What you want to be careful of when you're working on these is the asbestos. I'm just having a look at these brake calipers. So these are Maserati ones, but they're not dissimilar to Dino ones actually. So, or rather 2 litre Dino ones. We'll have a look, see what I'm doing on the bench here. So this one's already had some work. I've got this one apart. I've had the pistons out of this one. I have a handbrake mechanism on here. That's sort of how it works. And what you want to be careful of when you're working on these is the asbestos. So you don't want to get all the dust everywhere. Now I've washed all these down, so I've got rid of it. Now I cleaned everything up, it's all good to go. This will want new pistons and seals in it. So I'm quite, you know, that's going to be all right. I sort of want to save these, as in keep them in original condition. This set's different. These have been done. Now these went away to Pass Parts, who I use, who do a very nice job. But you can see they've recad plated them and so on. It's a new brake pipe made up for their transfer pipe. I've got these cleaned up and painted them, this bit of the mechanism, because they don't do that bit. And you can see it's got new pistons in here and seals and so on, so it's got brand new pistons in it. Now this is more of a preservation on this job than these ones are for another car, but they're both Maserati. But what we'll do is we'll have a look, a couple of things. One thing to note on this is that we've got a problem where the pads are starting to delaminate. These are worn out anyway, but you can see if we look down the edge there, let's see if we can get a close up on that. You can see in here it's starting to delaminate, starting to come away, come unbonded. So obviously they're worn anyway, they need replacing. Now these are just for the handbrake, this bit. But anyway, that's one thing to look at, delaminating pads. They can give a problem. So what they can do is, if you've got them on the hydraulic side of things, when the brake pads do that, you have a problem with what they call knockback. So what can happen is that the brake pad expands after you've put your foot on the brake, and it forces the pistons back. So every time you put your foot on the brake, you have long brake travel. And it feels a bit like you've got air in the brakes, like you have to pump the brakes up, but it's not. It's because you're having to compress the pads up where they delaminated. But that's, you know, not obviously not affect the handbrake. But what we're having a look at is this set, isn't it? These ones. So I've got that one apart, that's fine. What I want to do is get this apart and sort the pistons out. So you want this handbrake linkage apart. So we get the split pins out of it. Then we get this lot off as well, so it's out of the way, so it won't get damaged whilst we're working on it. We can put these back in here, that'll keep them safe. And we just pop our pins back in. Obviously this will have new split pins when I assemble it properly when the job's done, but for now this will just keep it together. Now these have a transfer pipe, so you've got four ports going into this. One's going to be for a bleed nipple, so you're going to bleed nipple there, and you've got a transfer pipe here that goes over to the other side there, and then you've got this port here where it's going in. So when you put your foot on the brake is going to go into that one. It's going to move that piston, then it's going to come across the transfer port to there, and then move these 2 pistons here. So that's how it's going to work, and then you can obviously undo that one to bleed it. But I've not got them in at the minute, the bleed nipples. But what I want to do is get this one apart. Now I've undone these before. Now because this has got a transfer pipe, you haven't got any porting in here between the 2 bits, so there's no problem with taking these apart. And some people say you shouldn't take them apart if you have seals in there, but obviously you can, but you need to replace the seals in there if you do, and that's the seals that go, because your transfer port will be internal into here, but obviously it's not on this one. it's external, so it's easy to strip down. It doesn't cause you any problems for, with getting them to seal again. But if you do take them apart and they have transfer ports in here, you want to keep this in the same place, to sort of maybe mark it with something so you know when it goes back together. And if you're having it all replated, you want to make sure, again, maybe centre dot them or something. But you want to make sure it's clean, nice surfaces when they go back together. And replace the seals, the transfer port seals. Let's say this hasn't got transfer port seals. We don't have to think about that. But what we'll do is try and keep it all together, so it all goes back together again in the same way. Okay, that's that bit. Yeah, so that's where you'd have these transfer ports, but this doesn't have them. So we want to get these pistons out. So we get this seal off first. This is just a dust seal, but you can see it's pretty much disintegrating. That's because it's been binding and it's gone off, the rubber's gone off. And when they bind, they get overheated. So you want to get that piston out. Now you can sort of grab it in the vise, or you can sometimes put a Jubilee clip round it and sort of lever it up. The various things you can do. A lot of people use compressed air, but they can shoot out a bit of an alarming rate of knots, which can be a bit dangerous. So what I do is I hydraulic them out with grease. So I put a bleed nipple in there to blank that off, just to close that up. And then what I've done is I've modified a brake union by putting a grease nipple onto it, and then I can use my powered grease gun, although obviously you can use a manual one, and I pump it full of grease and that gets them out. And it does it in a fairly controlled way. So you don't have to use one of these, you can use just a manual one. We put that on there, and then we should be able to pump it out and see what we got. So you're starting to move now. Now, normally I'd have this on the vise or clamped down so that if it does go off it doesn't cause a problem, but for the sake of what we're doing, let's just see what it does. It shouldn't come out there too hard anyway. There you go, that's done. So that's a fairly safe way of doing it. The thing is, it's pumped it full of grease there, which is obviously that's the void your brake fluid will be in. But you can see how rusty it is. You can see why we're having to take this apart and sort it out. So that's that. That's that bit. Now this one's got two pistons in it. It's not always as easy to do the two because we've got to try and do them at the same time, but we'll have a look at that next. So again, we've got this dust seal, but you can see how brittle this has gone. You see? So the fact that's gone so brittle is telling that this has been seized up for a while. It's probably been overheating every time they've been used, the brakes on it. But yeah, so what we'll do the same thing with that. What we want to do is get our unions out. So we get these two in and done up. Now how the porting works on these is it fills this void up, and then there's a transfer port between the two. So it's going to fill that one up first and then that one. So what I think we'll do is we'll clamp that down and try and get that to move first before, well anyway, I think that's what we're going to try and do. So I'll get a clamp that down. So any old clamp will do, but sort of a G clamp, that sort of thing. Okay, let's see what we got. It's moving that one quite easily, isn't it? So let's put this onto that one and get this one moving. Oh, it's going quite easy, isn't it? And if we sort of split between the two, I want to get most of the way out. See how rusty it is though. There you go, that's popped out. So I wonder if I can just hold that in whilst I do the other one. Probably not. See if I can hold this in just enough just to hold it back. Might not be easy, but let's just try. There you go. It's all right now. So that's the easy way to do them. And reasonably safe as well. Messy. But yeah, you can see the mess it's in, can't you? Yeah, it's starting to pick up in there, isn't it? Anyway, we'll get new pistons and seals and replace them, and that will be good. Next thing is get these seals out. So this is what's left of the dust seal. So with a pick we can try and get that out. It sits in a groove in there. It's a pretty nasty old thing. You don't slip and jab yourself with this. So that's that bit, and then inside here we got the actual hydraulic seal. There you go. And then what we're going to do is get all this cleaned up in here. So you'll see it's really messy in there. But you can clean it up with a pick like this, and you know you want to get it all cleaned up, and then wire brushes and so on. And don't breathe the dirt in, because it'll all be impregnated with asbestos, especially something of this age. Let's get a light on it so we can see a bit better what we're doing. So down in the bottom here, you'll see our ports. You see there and there. There. With also the grease is coming out of them as it were. So that's your ports. So one's an in and one's for bleeding it. And then remember with these ones we said we got a sort of piggyback affair. So again, one's going to be in, one's going to be out, going over to the other caliper. Or rather, actually, no, the in and out's going to be on the other on the single piston on the other side. So this is one of these is going to be transfer in, and one's going to be for bleeding it. And then you'll have a transfer port between the two, which will be down in here somewhere. There you go, there. See it? So that's it. And this is the same thing, the dust seal in there, and then an O-ring. So you can see here, look, here's your dust seal, what's left of it. Anyway, they all need a good clean up. Or, if you don't want to muck about, I told you what to do. So these are preservation. They're going to be done like that. That's all they're going to get. I'm going to sort them out. These as I say, been up to Past Parts, Nigel at Past Parts, give him a call, he'll sort these out. Then you get them all CAD plated like that. You can do different finishes, they can be painted, and they can do also the sort of golden coloured CAD plating. So depending on what sort of job you want, you know, if you don't want muck about like that, get him to do them. But the other thing that I get them to do is I get them to stainless steel line the mast cylinders. So a lot of problems with replacement mast cylinders aren't very good, or even if you've got the originals, you know, and you've got wear in the bore, what they can do is they through bore them, and then they put a stainless steel liner in there that then gets honed with it once all the drillings are done, you know, for the transfer ports and so on, inlet and outlets and things like that. And then of course you've got that stainless steel liner in there, and then you put new seals in and off you go, and it's lovely. But it also means you're using the original, so it looks original and you're not worried about some sort of wonky replacement part. In fact, actually, even some of the replacement parts I've had this done to, you know, when the original's been not worth saving, and the new ones are quite, the bores aren't really nicely done. I've actually sent them to him and had them sort them out. So that's another good thing to do, and they can do the same with slave cylinders on the clutch and mast cylinders on the clutch and so on. You don't do it to these calipers, that's not necessary. I have had it done on wheel cylinders when we salvaged them, particularly on the Amphicar. We did it to them, and the reason we did it with that, they were brand new cylinders, but we did it with that because obviously with it getting immersed in the water, it was giving a lot of trouble with them seizing up. And the stainless steel against the pistons, well, I can't remember what metal the pistons are made of in the wheel cylinders, but it tended to corrode less, whereas with the cast iron of the wheel cylinder against this funny sort of metal, whatever it is that the pistons are made of, we were getting a lot of trouble with corrosion on it. And of course, you've got to remember, brake fluid's hydroscopic, so it absorbs the water. So if you imagine on the Amphicar, every time it went in for a swim, it was immersed in water, so all the brakes get full of water because there's no way of keeping it out, the water. That's the way they work. So watch the Amphicar video and you'll see how good they are, particularly in the water. Well, obviously in the water you use the anchor. So I'm going to weigh anchor and go home. Good night.